In this video, I'm going to walk you through the rubric for the DBQ, the document-based question that appears on the AP History exams. I'll walk you through point by point what you need to do and show you how to get ready for test day. This video will apply for AP US History, European History, and World History. Let's take a look at this rubric. This is the AP US History rubric. I'm using the one on Tom Ritchie's website. This is at tomritchie.net. He has one for AP European History as well. Check out the link in the description. This is a really great way of designing the rubric. So you see the way he set this up. The first thing he has here at the top is what we call contextualization. And I think one of the reasons he might have put that there is that is often the first thing that students do in the first paragraph of their DBQ. Remember, a DBQ is going to present you with a prompt and 7 documents. And if you can earn the contextualization point, that's very often the first point that you get. So what does contextualization mean? Contextualization is a fancy word for the context, the stuff that happens before or after or even during the prompt that you're writing about. And what we recommend is that you write about 2 to 3 detailed sentences that are relevant to the topic, relevant to the prompt, and that you explain that in the opening paragraph. So if your prompt is about the period from 1865 to 1900, if you talk about the period from 1830 to 1865, that could clearly be some relevant context. You can also talk about the period afterwards, after 1900 to 1930, or even sometimes events going on simultaneously. But the most typical way that students earn contextualization is for the time period before the time of the prompt. So again, put the contextualization in the first paragraph, add enough detail to make it specific and rich, and make sure it's relevant to the prompt at hand. If you do all of that, the grader can award you 1 point for contextualization. And remember, depending on the exam, depending on the year, about 30 to 35% of students will earn the contextualization point. A much easier point to get, and probably a much more important one, is the thesis point. And that's number 2 here on this rubric. Now notice what it says. It says it must respond to the prompt with a historically defensible thesis or claim that establishes a line of reasoning. So there's 3 things you have to do. You have to respond to the prompt that you're given, not some other prompt that you made up in your head, not your idea of the prompt after you've only read it once and kind of forgot what it's about, but you respond to the prompt that you're given. You do that with a historically defensible claim, something that a historian could reasonably defend. So for example, if you're taking AP European History and you argue that the French Revolution caused the Protestant Reformation, that's not going to get the point because the Protestant Reformation happened in 1517-ish and the French Revolution happened in 1789-ish. The French Revolution can't have caused the thing that came a couple centuries before. So make sure that your claim is defensible. And it also must establish a line of reasoning. It must indicate specifically why you believe your claim to be true, focusing in on something more specific than economic, social, and political. Get more specific. So if you want to argue that the French Revolution was primarily caused by 2 things in response to the prompt, make sure you identify what those 2 things are. That will help make sure that you get this point. Again, about twice as many people will earn the thesis point as the contextualization point. So it's a much easier point to get. We recommend you place it right at the end of the first paragraph, 1 to 2 sentences. Make sure that it's very clear to the reader what your argument is and how it's a clear response to the prompt. So as you're writing your DBQ, your first paragraph can almost write itself and organize itself. Contextualization is a few sentences at the front of the first paragraph, the thesis at the end. You tie it up in a pretty bow and try to earn 2 points. Now your job is to finish out the rest of the essay. But rather than trying to write the world's greatest essay, try to get points. So let's take a look at the rubric. Here's the first of the evidence points. This says it accurately describes the content of at least 3 documents to address the topic of the prompt. And notice that it says quotes are insufficient to earn this point. So one tip that Tom Ritchie always gives is don't quote the sources at length. The graders don't want to reread the quotes in your handwriting or have you retype them out. Use tiny snippets of quotes, or better, describe them. And that's what you get. If you accurately describe the content of at least 3 documents, you get a point. You can mention them by name. You could say Doc 2 or Doc 7, or you could describe them as Ibn Battuta says in his records from the 15th century, such and such. And then it's clear to the reader that you're engaging with that document. Now, here's where it gets a little bit harder. So we've earned the first easiest evidence point. Look at the next one. It must support An argument in response to the prompt using at least 6 documents. There's always 7 documents, whether they're text or an image like a drawing or a map. You want to try to use, we recommend, all 7 documents. This way, if you kind of mess up your interpretation of one of them, you'll still get this point because you've used at least 6. It says here that these documents should meet and exceed the standard set for the description point. So your goal is to not just describe the document or briefly quote it, but to tie it back into your argument. This document demonstrates X. What we can see from this document, that's not the best writing in the world, but those sorts of phrases will indicate to the reader that you're not just cherry picking the documents and dropping them in, you're tying them back to an argument. So as we work our way down this rubric, we're trying to earn all of these points. What's beautiful, everyone, is if we are right here, we've earned the contextualization point and the thesis point, and we earned the point for engaging with 3 of the documents by describing them, and actually using all 7, say we've put two body paragraphs, you have enough points on this DBQ rubric to be in contention for a 5 on the AP exam. That's an incredible thing. Your goal is not to get 7 out of 7 on the DBQ. Your goal is probably to get a 5 or a 6 if you can. And if you're running out of time or you're not sure about what to do, maybe you're only aiming for 3 or 4. That can actually be plenty. On the AP exams, whether they're the 3 history exams, AP Euro, APUSH or World, or really any of the other ones, you need about 75% of the total points to get a 5. So that's something that can really change your strategy. You're writing for points and not necessarily all of them. So people often ask, do I need a concluding paragraph? No, that's not on this rubric. Do I need to add all these bells and whistles? No, that's not really on this rubric. Focus on getting the points one by one. Now let's take a look at what's called the sourcing point. You might have learned this in your class as POV plus or HIP or HAPPY or CAP, whatever you've used. This is about sourcing the document. Let's read it. It says, for at least 3 documents, you need to explain how or why the document's point of view, POV, purpose, historical situation, and or audience is relevant to an argument. So you take an individual document, document 2, and you talk about the purpose of that document, the audience. Oh, this is a private letter to the king. Oh, this is something that's published in a newspaper that's circulated widely. This is a report by a government official to another government official. Who is the audience? Who's speaking? If you can identify that and make that relevant to your argument, you can earn the sourcing point. You've got to do it for at least 3 of the documents. That can be a heavy lift. This is a hard thing to do, so you might not want to make this integral to your strategy the way you are with the thesis and evidence points. Now this is kind of an easier point to get. This is point number 6 on our rubric. Uses at least 1 additional piece of specific historical evidence. You have to name something that's not in the 7 documents that you're presented, that's specific, that relates to the whole picture. If you can name that thing, and maybe you want to try to do this twice just in case your first one doesn't work. If you can name that thing and integrate it into the story, you get 1 point. That's a lot easier than working with all 7 documents to get a point or sourcing 3 of them. 1 specific piece of outside evidence. And it says, the response must describe the evidence and must use more than a phrase or reference. So don't do a drive-by use of outside evidence, really integrating it in. And this is a key point that's added here. It says this additional piece of evidence must be different from the evidence used to earn the point for contextualization. On this rubric, you can't really double dip. The only way that that happens is maybe this part right here that uses the 3 documents and then you use 6, so you kind of build the points up, but the points are really separate from one another. So make sure that whatever you're presenting for outside evidence, you're doing in a body paragraph, maybe if you have a quick conclusion, but you're making it very clear that that's something that's not in the documents and something that is relevant to the argument. And now we're going to talk about this point, the complexity point. Sometimes it's called the unicorn point. You should not be focused on this as much as you are. I know that's disappointing. Everyone's talking about it online. It's really not the name of the game. If you have earned 6 points by the time you get to the bottom of the rubric, then that's really incredible. That's more than what you need to secure a 5, assuming you do well everywhere else. This is the hardest point to get. It's very rare that it's ever given out. So why would you focus your strategy here? Let's take a look at what it says. You need to demonstrate a complex understanding of a historical development that is the focus of the prompt, using evidence to corroborate, qualify, or modify an argument that addresses the question. And so you can see at the bottom here various ways that you can do this. You can explain nuance by analyzing multiple variables. You can see how that could happen over a concluding paragraph in multiple sentences. Explain both similarity and difference, both continuity and change, or multiple causes, or both causes and effects. You can explain relevant and insightful connections within and across periods. You can confirm the validity of an argument by corroborating multiple perspectives across things. You can go nuts. And I think that in going nuts, trying to get all of this stuff correct and show complexity, you might miss out on some of these other points. So I hope everyone who's watching this gets the complexity point, but you get it almost as icing on the cake. You're not earning it for one clear spot in the essay, like a thesis at the end of the first paragraph, or counting all your use of the documents. It's an overall point. It's an overall holistic impression that you make on the reader. If you really wow the reader, then the reader will assign this point to you. So let's just say you don't earn the point like most people and you get a 6 out of 7. That's an incredible performance. So whether you're taking AP US History, AP European History, or AP World History, remember how this rubric works. You want a thesis at the end of the first paragraph. You want a contextualization if you can to set it up. Start using the documents. Once you've passed 3, you'll get a point for that. Use all 7 to get the second point. And then remember, you want to try to source at least 3 documents and add in 1 more piece of evidence. You're not writing the world's best essay. You're writing the first draft. You're going to be getting points from the readers. Remember, they're never going to take them away. It's called positive scoring, and you're going to do your best. So set the bar nice and low for yourself and aim for those points. Good luck on test day. For more resources on the DBQ, check out our playlist for AP European History, AP World History, and AP US History, and check out our free practice tests and study guides. We'll put the link in the description.